Hello Year 10, welcome to the very last lesson on Germany between 1919 to 1939. This is the second part of the last subtopic, which is all about Hitler's foreign policy, which are all things that Hitler did that involved other countries. The first lesson was all about his aims. What did he want to achieve? There were 5 things that he wanted to achieve to do with other countries. That was unite with Austria, end communism, reverse the Treaty of Versailles, unite all German-speaking people, and create Lebensraum, living space, for Germany. Last lesson you filled in the 2 pages of the timeline with things that Hitler did, pacts that he made with other countries that would try and meet those aims. What we're going to be doing today is just kind of summarising all that, and then also thinking about how Hitler's foreign policy is going to lead to a world war. Okay, let's get started. So if you go to the page after the timeline, there is a cartoon, a very famous British cartoon. It's what we call a Punch cartoon. Punch was a type of magazine that was around, and it's been around for a very, very long time. And it was famous for putting in political cartoons, so cartoons that would kind of make fun of events that were going on. They're very useful as primary sources, and I always get excited if in an exam you get a political Punch cartoon to analyse, because there's always lots of hidden meanings in it, and symbols and things that you can recognise that give you a message. So let's look at source V, which is a cartoon from a British magazine, Punch magazine, and they publish cartoons about key issues of the time. It shows Stalin, who's the leader of the USSR, and Hitler in 1939. So Stalin is the leader of the USSR. Remember, the USSR is communist Russia. Think about how Hitler feels about communism, and also think about some of the things that he did in terms of foreign policy last lesson. He signed the Nazi-Soviet pact with Stalin, which was the agreement that they would both work together, bring their armies together, invade Poland together. Think about that as your context while you're labelling the diagram. So I would maybe circle things that interest you and do an arrow coming out of it and label around with what those bits mean. Okay, so spend a few minutes, pause this video, label and annotate this source for me please with things that stand out and what do you think they mean, and then I'll go through the answers with you on the next slide. So pause and label, otherwise I'm going to move on. Okay, so the things that stand out to me on this diagram is that Stalin and Hitler are kind of arm in arm. Now, if I were to do an arrow coming out of that, I would say that suggests that they're friends, that they're allies. And if we were being super clever about it, we could use a detailed fact that they are allies because they've signed the Nazi-Soviet pact in 1939. So they're friends. The other thing that I notice is they've both got guns behind their backs. So the guns behind their backs suggests that the friendship is fake, that the alliance is fake, and at some point they're going to use violence against each other. They're going to try and kill each other because that's what the guns behind the back represents. I've also noticed that they're kind of tied up by the legs, like when you do a 3-legged race. Again, this could show that they're close, but when you do a 3-legged race, it is harder, isn't it? It kind of stops you from doing it. So maybe this is implying that the Nazi-Soviet pact is actually going to be a hindrance more than a help, and it's going to stop the 2 people from doing what they actually want to do. Stalin wants to make countries communist, and Hitler wants to end communism and eventually overtake Russia and the USSR. So this Soviet pact is not only fake, but it's actually doing more harm than good. It's stopping the 2 leaders from doing what they want to do, possibly. Some of you may have picked up on where they're walking to. So I haven't labelled it, but you can see they're walking on a road called the Eastern Frontier. So Eastern is like Eastern Europe, so you're thinking about Poland, USSR, and that type of thing. So obviously walking towards the Eastern Front. Now, something that some of you may know, but most of you probably don't, is that Russia had oil interests. You can get oil in Russia, and Hitler is keen to take that for himself because oil obviously equals money. So I think what they're trying to show is they're both marching towards, you know, the oil in Russia, or the Soviet Union, whatever you want to call it, and are kind of suggesting that that's what Hitler's aim is, maybe to be allies with the USSR so they can share oil, and then eventually he's going to stab him in the back and take that oil for himself. Never forget the caption on cartoons like this. They always have a witty caption, and that also gives us a message. Someone is taking someone for a walk. Now, those of you that maybe watch more kind of mafia gang mob films or TV series, if you take somebody for a walk, that implies that you're going to take them somewhere quiet to kill them, so that, you know, nobody draws attention to it. And the caption is saying someone is taking someone for a walk, but they're not being specific. So this is implying that one of the leaders is going to quietly take the other away and kill them, but we don't know who that's going to be. Is Hitler going to kill Stalin and take over Russia, or is Stalin going to betray Hitler and take over Germany? They're both powerful leaders, dictators of their countries. So at 1939, it was hard to kind of know who was going to be the winner and who was going to betray the other. Spoiler, it is going to be Hitler that betrays Stalin. Probably not so much of a spoiler is that Hitler's going to lose World War II and the USSR is going to, you know, not lose. It's going to side with the Allies and they're going to win. So that's how it's going to end for Hitler and Stalin. Okay, so hopefully you've got plenty of things that tell us that the Nazi-Soviet pact was basically fake for both sides. They were both using one another, either for oil or for power or for alliances, and it was unclear as to who was the most powerful and who was going to betray the other first. Okay, if we go to the next page in the booklet, I've got the 5 aims that Hitler wanted to achieve. And we're going to look and take notes, and you can do this as bullet point, like a bullet point list if you want, of all the things that Hitler has done in order to try and achieve his foreign policy aim. So one of his aims was to achieve Anschluss. So has he achieved Anschluss, which was to unite with Austria? Now it's worth pointing out that there were 2 attempts at Anschluss. So you might want to put bullet point 1 in that box. Hitler attempts to unite with Austria, and I think it's 1935, but I did get the dates wrong on the last video, didn't I? So you might want to double check on your timeline. Oh, hang on, I can double check on the timeline. I've got it right here. 1930, oh, hang on, what did I get it wrong on? Was it the timeline or the PowerPoint? I think it was timeline. I think it is 1935, you know. And then there was the second attempt in 1930, and again it says 6 on it, but I think it was 1938 that the second attempt at Anschluss was. I can't, oh, hang on, I can check on my phone. This isn't very good, is it? But I've confused myself with the timeline. Anschluss. Yeah, 1938. Haha, I was right. So the second attempt was in 1938. So you might want to say Hitler attempted to unite with Austria in 1935, but it didn't go very well and it failed. And then you might want to say, however, he successfully united with Austria in 1938. Same tactics as the first one, but this one worked. You create a rebellion in Austria to make it look like there's trouble and they need someone to come and help them. The person that comes to help them are the Nazis, because by this point they're organised, they have an army, they look strong. Hitler sends the army in to keep the peace, but what they end up doing is actually staying there and forcing people to obey them. One of the things they do is they hold a fake election in a way, like a Brexit referendum, where they say you can vote if you want to unite with Germany, but obviously the army, or they're holding guns to people's faces, so of course people vote yes. And I think it's like 99.8% of people vote to unite with Austria, with Germany. So he achieves that, definitely. Next one is to unite all German-speaking people. there were German-speaking people in Austria. So we might going to repeat ourselves with certain things, and that's fine. So again, you can put Anschluss in 1938, Hitler unites with Austria. Are there any other countries that speak German that Hitler tried to unite with Germany? Maybe you're already getting it down, maybe you're thinking I can't remember. So do you remember how Czechoslovakia, which is the country that looks like a worm that's going into Germany. Now the bit right in Germany, the border of Czechoslovakia, was an area called the Sudetenland. There were lots of German-speaking people in the Sudetenland because it used to be German land before the Treaty of Versailles gave it away. So again, Hitler kicks off and says, I want the Sudetenland to be part of Germany. It used to be before the Treaty of Versailles. There's a lot of German-speaking people there. They want to unite. So that's when Britain and Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain gets involved and he starts to negotiate. He thinks he can control Hitler, and the way he does that is by appeasing him. So he gives him a little bit of what he wants and then says, now you mustn't want any more. So he gives him the Sudetenland and says, you can have the Sudetenland, but do not take over any of the countries, especially the rest of Czechoslovakia. So you could put Hitler gets the Sudetenland as a bullet point for uniting all German-speaking people. Does he leave it there? Does he take over any other countries? Yes, he does. He ignores Neville Chamberlain and he does take over the rest of Czechoslovakia, which would have included German-speaking people. So you can do that as well. On the 1st of September 1939, he's also going to do what he promised he would do with USSR and Stalin. What did they both decide that they wanted to do? Take over Poland, because as you can see, Poland is right in the middle between Germany and the USSR. So on the 1st of September 1939, he invades Poland with Stalin's help. Now Poland would have had some German-speaking people in it as well, because the country essentially didn't exist until the Treaty of Versailles gave land away from Russia and Germany after World War I. So that's another one you can put into uniting all German-speaking people. Can we think of anything else that he did that united German-speaking people? I think that's it, isn't it? That's all the countries. You could talk about the Saarland, S-A-R land. Do you remember they were the only country that actually legitimately voted to be part of Germany because they used to? So you could add that as well to unite all German-speaking people. Okay, let's go to Lebensraum, which is living space. So anytime he took over a country, essentially, he was creating more space for German people. So we're going to repeat ourselves again because he took over the Sudetenland, Austria, Czechoslovakia and Poland. And by doing all of those, he creates living space. And then when you're ready, what's he done to reverse the Treaty of Versailles? So think about all the rules. You had to pay reparations to France and Belgium. You weren't allowed an army of 100,000. You weren't allowed to unite with Austria. You had to sign the War Guilt Clause. You weren't allowed to be part of the League of Nations. And you had to give land away that used to belong to Germany. So what has Hitler done that goes against that? You might want to pause and just do it yourself, but I'm going to go through it with you otherwise. So he stops paying reparations to Belgium and France, number one. They're already part of the League of Nations, but Hitler does pull out of the League of Nations. Now, that might be something that you want to get down. It might be something that you feel like technically doesn't really count because part of the Treaty of Versailles was that they weren't part of the League of Nations anyway. He builds up the army, very, very important. Not only does he build up the army to more than 100,000, he creates an air force, the Luftwaffe, he builds up the navy, he builds tanks, he's constantly making weapons and things like that. He unites with Austria. The two attempts at Anschluss, and one of them is successful, so he's now like taken over Austria, which is definitely against the Treaty of Versailles. And I think, obviously, by taking over countries that used to belong to Germany, like Czechoslovakia and Poland, he's broken that rule as well, which is where they had to give the land away in the first place. So there's quite a few things you could put there for reversing the Treaty of Versailles. And finally, Hitler wanted to end communism. What did he do in order to end communism? It's mainly all about alliances that he makes, doesn't he? He tries to unite with people and promise that they'll end communism together. So there's two big countries that he unites with that are all anti-communist, and that's Italy and Japan. So they signed the Anti-Comintern Pact with Japan, and they signed the Rome-Berlin Axis with Italy. Because the capital of Italy is Rome. So get that down. And then you could also talk about the Nazi-Soviet Pact, which was the pact he made with Stalin, which was the cartoon that we were labelling, because that's kind of like a fake pact. He's doing it to be fake friends with Soviet Russia so that he can then stab them in the back later on. So that's something worth getting down as well. And there you go. I'm going to move on. So pause the clip if you need time to get all those bullet points down. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next task. Okay, you've got a map on the next page. This is the exact same map as we had at the beginning of the booklet in last lesson. And I know that, what country is dodgy on this? Or is it the actual map I gave you? This map's good, isn't it? It was the coloured in map that I gave you that was a bit dodgy. So this map's good. So this is a map of Europe in 1939 when World War II is just about to kick off. So, can you label the key countries again like you did last time? So, key countries would be countries like France, Germany, UK, Poland, USSR, Italy, Czechoslovakia, Austria. Those would be your big ones because those are the ones that we talk about quite a lot. Don't worry about Spain and Hungary and places like that. Can you then colour in countries that have now been part of Germany? So you want to think about the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Poland. Those are the countries that are owned by Germany now. You might want to do another colour for countries that are in alliances, because then you could talk about Italy, Russia, Japan's not on that map, so you can include colour in Japan. But that might be a good one as well, because there's a difference between owning a country, taking it over, and being allies with the country, isn't there? So you could just do that. All right, and again, pause that so that you can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to move on, and we'll just have to check it in class when I see you. Okay. One more task, and then we're done. There are some exam questions in this booklet, but we're not going to worry about those until we're all together again. Okay, so it says, create a diagram that shows the steps Hitler took that led to World War II. Hint, 5 is a good number of steps. Now, if we were in the classroom, I would have given you some Year 9 work from previous years. I can't remember if we, yeah, you guys, it would have been some of your work as well, because you guys would have done it, where I get them to do a task where we talk about the things that Hitler did, the 5 steps that Hitler took that led to war. And I'd give them out and you could use them as inspiration. What I'll do is I'll take pictures of them, so I'll put them up on Instagram, CCBC History Instagram page, and I'll also put them up on the SharePoint to give you a bit of inspiration. I'll also put what they say in the textbook about Hitler's steps to war, but it's pretty boring and obvious, but just in case you wanted that as well. So you've got a whole page. I've suggested 5 things that Hitler does that's going to end up with, on the 3rd of September 1939, Britain, Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of Britain, gives a famous speech where he says, consequently, we are now at war with Germany. And that starts World War II. So what has Hitler done that means that Britain have got no other choice than in 1939, on the 3rd of September, to say that we've tried everything, but actually we now need to stop Hitler. Hitler now needs, we need our allies, we need France, we need eventually America to come and help us stop this man. 5 things I would recommend. I would maybe start with some of the early things on that timeline that we filled in. So maybe him building up the army possibly could be a good one. And you want to finish with the last thing that Hitler does, and that's the 1st of September 1939, where he invades Poland. That is Britain's last straw. That's when Britain are like, well, there's no negotiating with this man. He's taken over quite a big country, and he's done it with Russia, that's a big deal. So I would end with the invasion of Poland, and then you could start with various things. Maybe start building up his army. And then there's other things that he does, other countries that he takes over. It could be maybe alliances that he makes that you feel makes him a threat and means that Britain have to declare war to try and stop him. Now, you could do it literally, like I've done on this slide, which are steps. People have done ladders in the past, or you can be creative and kind of do like roads or, you know, various diagrams. Hopefully the ones I'll show you will give you some inspiration. So write a subheading that names each step. So invasion of Poland, invasion of Czechoslovakia, rebuilding the army. Bit of information about it, images if you need to. You can even label them with kind of like levels of threat. So everything is peaceful. Ooh, tension. Hitler is looking greedy. Hitler gets away with it. And then you could end with like all-out war. Completely up to you. Take a picture of the diagram, please, especially so that I can see them. I might even give prizes eventually when we all see each other for the best diagrams. And then that's it. We're finished with Hitler's foreign policy, and we are finished with Germany. That means you need to keep all these booklets nice and safe in your folder, please. So in September you bring that folder into school and we start to go over things, and then we look at the exam questions. So what you need to make sure that happens is by September that every single booklet is filled in. Now if you've got gaps, or if there's been things that have stopped you from doing work while we've been on lockdown, the videos are all up on SharePoint and they're all up on YouTube, CCBC History, under a playlist called Year 10 Working From Home. If you have any issues, you can't work out which video matches which part of the booklet, just send me an email and I'll find the video for you and send you that exact video. Or if you've got any questions, I'll answer those questions for you. What you don't want is to come to school in September and have massive gaps and therefore be behind everybody else. Okay? It will just add to the stress and the workload when we all get back. Okay, so that's that. Keep all your booklets safe. Make sure they're all finished. All questions on the front are filled in as well. And then I think that's that. I think we're done. Yeah, so just make sure the questions at the front of the booklet are filled in. And then we are now done until September. So have a lovely holiday. Just make sure you come prepared in September for us to go over it again, because obviously you've done all this on your own, and then to start on the exam questions. Okay, thank you very much, Year 10.